Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hassan Salam. I'm a professor in obstetrics and gynecology at Alexandria University in Egypt. And today I'm going to talk to you about the legacy of Middle Eastern medicine. This, in fact, was a lecture I gave in the opening ceremony of the World Congress of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecology in Muscat, Oman in October of 2024. And let's start by defining the Middle East. Well, the Middle East is a term which was coined by the Foreign Office of the United Kingdom during the 19th century. For them, looking from their office in England, there was the Near East, there was the Middle East, then there was India, and finally the Far East. So this is the Middle East as we know it today. And let's start by the first country in the Middle East that we know of, Egypt. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the oldest stone building still standing in the world. This is the stepped pyramids of Djoser, of King Djoser at Saqqara. It was built by this man, Imhotep, who was a great architect, but he was also a great physician, to the extent that the Egyptians made him the god of medicine. And yes, did they know about medicine? Yes, they knew about anatomy because they practiced mummification, as we know. They could reach the brain through through the ethmoid bone, as you can see here, and the soft tissues. They put them in the canopic jars, the four canopic jars, where the heart organs like the heart and the kidney were left in the cadaver, which was put in the natrium salt for 40 days before being embalmed and covered with linen. They knew about poliomyelitis and dwarfism. He is the dwarf Seneb and his wife. They knew about Pott's disease of the spine, tuberculosis of the spine. And as you can see here in these presentations, they practiced some primitive surgical operations like circumcision. And as you can see on the right, these are the instruments they used to use in these operations. They knew about the birthing stool, something we are coming back to these days to help women deliver, helped by gravity. And as you can see them here in the wall of the Temple of Komombo. They knew about contraception, and women were putting different things like honey, acacia leaves, lint, and different tampons in their vagina to prevent pregnancy. They also knew about male contraception, and this is the first example of a condom. They had a primitive pregnancy test where a woman would put her urine on barley and emmer, and depending on which one of them would grow, it would be a boy or a girl. And if none of them grew, then she's not pregnant. Now, interestingly, the National Institutes of Health found that this method was accurate in about 70% of the time. They knew about industrial medicine, how to extract foreign bodies from the eyes of people. They how to reduce elbow dislocation. They had also some surgical prostheses like this toe, as you can see, and also using nails to fix the different bone fractures. They practiced dentistry, and as you can see here, some other prostheses to join the teeth whenever they were separated or weak. They had a notation system for the prescriptions based on the Eye of Horus, something we use up till now in our prescriptions. They knew about anesthesia, and they used different opium-like preparations in surgery. But more interestingly, they used a mixture of vinegar and crushed marble zone to freeze the part of the skin where the scalpel would be applied. They had female physicians, and the first female physician we know is Merit Petah from 2700 BC. That's 4,700 years ago, the first woman known by name in the history of the field of medicine. And also Pesachet, who was the lady overseer of the female physicians around the same time. And they had medical books in the form of papyri, of course, in different museums of the world now. The Edwin Smith papyrus, the Ebers papyrus, and the Kahun gynecological papyrus in University College London. Another part of the Middle East was Mesopotamia at that time. There, medicine was also practiced. Gula was the goddess of medicine, and to them we owe the rod intertwined with serpents, something we use up till now as a logo for medicine and healing. To become a doctor at that time, you had to become a scribe first and focus on medical treatise. There were two types of doctors, doctors for the body and another one for the soul. And here are the medical texts shown here in the cuneiform scripture as they used at that time in Mesopotamia. And things remained like this in the Middle East until Alexander the Great, Megas Alexandros, conquered Egypt. Megas Alexandros, Alex, number one, Andros, andrology, the first among men. He was the disciple of this man, Aristotle, the person who taught humanity logic and common sense. And this is his empire, the empire of Alexander the Great, at its zenith. But before going to Asia, he came to Egypt and established the city of Alexandria. And like any Greek city, Alexandria had its agora, it had its amphitheater, but more importantly, it had its lighthouse, and even more importantly, it had a place where you collect universal knowledge, a university. And how do you do this? In the forms of books. So it was a library, or it was a university, call it as you like, and described here by Strabo a few years before Christ. And there was a medical school, L'Ancienne École de Médecine d'Alexandrie. And in this school were two famous physicians, Herophilus and Erasistratus. Herophilus is the father of anatomy. Before him, a dissection of the human body was a taboo. But then when he came, because they were following the ideas of Aristotle and logic and common sense, he systematically dissected the human body and described many things in the brain, basics of gynecology. He measured the pulse also. He described the dura mater, and actually there's a confluence of veins in the brain called the torcula hierophiliae in his name. He wrote 9 books. The other genius was Erasistratus, the first person to coin the word pathology. He's supposed to be the father of pathology, but he also wrote about the functions of the ventricular heart valves. He knew the difference between motor and sensory nerves, and he rejected the humor's theory of Hippocrates. And things remain like this from 331 BC until 31 BC, where Cleopatra, the last Ptolemaic queen of Egypt, with Mark Antony, were defeated by Octavius in the naval battle of Actium. But even though the work in the medical school of Alexandria continued, and here is Soranus, the father of gynecology, the first person to describe the human uterus, here shown in a medieval text. There was also Metrodora, the first female Egyptian gynecologist, and the book of Soranus called Gynecology. There was also Rufus of Ephesus, who studied and worked in Alexandria. He came originally from Ephesus, but he worked and stayed in Alexandria and studied and worked in Alexandria. More important, there was Claudius Galen, who came originally from Pergamon, but again studied in Alexandria for 9 years before traveling to Rome and becoming the first personal physician to the Emperor Marcus Aurelius and his son Commodus, if you have seen the film Gladiator. And things remained like this at that time. Christianity came to Egypt. Now this is St. Mark the Evangelist. He came from the east part of Libya near Benghazi and spread Christianity in Egypt before traveling to Italy, to Venice, and spreading Christianity over there. And as we see, of course, the St. Marco Cathedral over there, named after his name, of course. And here he's shown in different parts with his tamed lion. And as happens, some people take religion in a mild way, and some of them are a little bit fanatic. And actually, Egyptians were always fanatic about the religion. And there, when the Roman Empire became Holy Christian in 325, following Constantine's ruling, the Archbishop of Alexandria, Theophilus, extracted an edict from the Emperor Flavius Theodosius, called Theodosius the Great, to destroy everything pagan in 389. So in 391 was the Great Fire of Alexandria. The first thing attacked was the temple of Serapis, the new god of Alexandria, the Serapeum. Unfortunately, the library had been transported into the lower part of the temple, and the whole library was burnt in 391. The teachers of Alexandria University are called the philosophers because they would reach their conclusions based on philosophy and common sense. You could be a philosopher and a geometer. You could be a philosopher and a physician. They were all called philosophers. And during that time, these philosophers were attacked by the mobs and killed. And the last one of them was Hypatia of Alexandria. Hypatia was a mathematician and a philosopher, as said. She was the last librarian of Alexandria Library. She was dragged while she was giving a lecture in March of 415, dragged along the streets of Alexandria, and she was killed. And this was the beginning of the Dark Ages. However, luckily for humanity, there were Byzantine physicians, Arabian physicians, Jewish scholars, and Christian monks who salvaged some of this knowledge. These are the major branches of Christianity. As you can see, there are many today. But the first shift, the first schism happened in 431 in the Council of Ephesus, where the Assyrian Church separated from the mainline Christianity. Now, the head of the Assyrian Church was a man called Nestorius. He came from the city of Marash, Nestor al-Marashli. Marash, today called Kahraman Marash, in the southeast part of Turkey. They separated, forming the Nestorian Church, or the Assyrian Church, also called the the Orthodox Church of the East. There were still they wanted to be away from the hands of Constantinople, so they immigrated to this newly established empire, the Sassanid Empire. Now, the Sassanid Empire was established by Ardashir I, and his son Shahbur I established the city of Gondishapur, and the Academy of Gondishapur was where the first teaching hospital in the history of medicine started. Based mainly on these Nestorian physicians who translated many of the Greek and Syrian texts, many of the texts of Alexandria, which were salvaged and so on. We owe to them the current hospital system, Bimaristan, which is a Persian word meaning house of the sick. And here is Gondishapur, midway between Tehran and Baghdad. Then came the Arabs. The revelation to Prophet Muhammad happened in the year 610, and by the year he died, the whole of Arabia became one Arab Muslim empire. And after his death, things expanded like fire in Iraq, then Syria, then Egypt, Persia, North Africa, the land beyond the river here being the Oxus, Bilad Ma Wara Nahr, the river which separates Afghanistan from Uzbekistan, and above which you have the cities of Samarkand, Tashkand, Bukhara, and Khiva, also called Khwarazm, and then in 711 Spain and Portugal. And this is the Arab Islamic Empire at its zenith between the 7th and the 9th century AD. Now there, the Arabs discovered the ideas of Aristotle. For them, he was always the first teacher, because their own philosopher, Abu Nasr al-Farabi, was called always the second teacher, because Aristotle was the first teacher. Let's not forget that during the time of the Prophet, nursing was known. It was actually started by this Rufayd al-Aslamiyya, who used to go with the Prophet on many of his campaigns. And when the Arabs conquered these newly conquered areas, they established new bimaristans, hospitals, houses for the sick, where people were treated regardless of their ethnicity or religion, usually free of charge. And the interest was not only about the physical health, but also palliative care was taken care of, like the presence of libraries, mosques, caucasian chapels, musicians, and so on. They kept records for the patients. Before you become a physician, you had to have a licensure examination, and there were different hospital wards, and as said, they were free of charge. Like the Bimaristan of Adudi in Baghdad, the Bimaristan al-Adudi in Baghdad, the Nuruddin Bimaristan, Nuruddin Zinki in Damascus, the Bimaristan of Mansour Qalawun in Cairo, which is present functioning up till now as an ophthalmology hospital in Cairo, the Bimaristan of Aleppo, built by Arqun al-Kamili, which is now a mental hospital, the Bimaristan again of Cairo by the Mamluk Sultan Al-Muayyid Sheikh. And there in these hospitals were physicians and surgeons. I cannot call them Arabs because many of them were not Arabs. I cannot call them Muslims because many of them were not Muslims, like Ibn Masawi, Yaqub ibn Ishaq. These were Christians, were Nestorian Christians, I said. Isaac Judaeus was an Egyptian Jew. Ali Abbas al-Majusi was Zoroastrian. But they were all speaking in the lingua franca at that time, which is Arabic. So you can call them Arab-speaking physicians. Some more of them we are going to meet shortly. Now, the first group of these doctors were the Bukht Yeshua family. Bukht Yeshua, slave of Yeshua, slave of Jesus, slave of, as we say in Arabic, Abdul Masih, or as they say in Amharic, Ghebreyesus, as the head of WHO, Professor Tedros Ghebreyesus. The most important of these Bukht Yeshua family was the Jibril ibn Bukht Yeshua. And this Jibril was, as I said, Nestorian, or coming from the Academy of Gondi Shapur. And he was one of the members of the family, of course. He was the person physician of the great Khalif Harun al-Rashid at the Akm of the Abbasid Empire. He wrote various medical books, and he described again psychological phenomena. He is buried in Madain, which is Ctesiphon in Persia. One of his students was Ibn Masawi, He was again another historian Christian from the Academy of Gondi Shapur. He came to Baghdad and studied under Gabriel ibn Yashua, and he was the director of the Bimaristan of Baghdad. And he was the personal physician of 4 caliphs. He wrote different books of ophthalmology, fevers, leprosy, headache, melancholia, dietetics, and he also was the teacher of another famous physician, Hunayn ibn Ishaq, and again called in the West Ioannidis. He was another Arab Nestorian Christian who also went to Baghdad to study under the Yohanna ibn Masawayh. He was a genius, spoke 4 languages, translated many books by Plato, Aristotle, and Galen, but produced also 36 of his own books. He was made in charge of the House of Wisdom, Bit al-Hikmah, which was established by the famous Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun. Ali ibn Sahl Raban al-Tabari was another famous physician. He was a physician and psychologist, and he wrote an encyclopedia of medicine called the Paradise of Wisdom, divided into 7 sections and 30 parts with 360 chapters in all. So he was also, one of his most important students was Abu Bakr al-Razi, called Razis in the West. And he is Abu Bakr al-Razi. He was born in Ray. Ray is a suburb of Tehran. So he's a Razi. He was educated in Baghdad, and he is one of the most important figures in the history of medicine. He can be called the father of pharmacology. He wrote more than 200 books, many of them translated to different languages, including Chinese. He spoke about the antimicrobial effect of certain substances, used in mercuric oxide in wound disinfection. He differentiated between smallpox and measles. He was the chief physician of Baghdad and Ray hospitals, Bimaristans. He was also the father of pediatrics. And when he was asked to establish Bimaristan of Baghdad, he chose its location by hanging fresh meat in various areas of the city, and finding which one of them did not rot or stayed more than the others, where he established the hospital. Here he is. He's a pioneer of pharmacology, as said. He's also a pioneer of medical ethics. He spoke that even to our enemies, we should not compose mortiferous remedies. His famous book is Al-Hawi in Medicine. And here is Al-Hawi in Medicine in its Arabic form and its translation in Latin. And these are some of his depictions in Princeton University, and again by Gerard de Cremona, and here by Ernest Board. Ibn Ishaq, Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn A'ib al-Ash'as was another famous physician. He is the father of physiology, of gastric physiology, and he is how he described the gastrointestinal tract. He worked and died in Mosul in Iraq. But the king of them all was Avicenna, Al-Hussein ibn Sina, called Avicenna in the West. He was born in Bukhara, present-day Uzbekistan, where he practiced. But later in his life, he went to different places like Tehran, Ray, and Isfahan. As said, he wrote 40 books on medicine, and he was the father of structured approach to physical examination. He illustrated many natures of infections, tuberculosis, meningitis. He put special importance on the psyche, so you had to treat the psyche and the drugs and the diet. He wrote his famous book Al-Qanun fil Tibb, Canon in Medicine, or the Law of Medicine, which remained as an important textbook in the Western world until as late as 1650. Later he moved to Urganj, the capital of Khwarazm, and then to Ray, Hamdan, and Isfahan, where he died. And here is his book, Al-Qanun fi Tibb, the Canon of Medicine, by Avicenna. Another one. Another famous physician was Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, known in the West as Al-Hazan. He was born in Basra, but made most of his work in Cairo. He is really the father of modern optics because he's the first person to say that we can see not because um, light goes from the eye to the object, but actually it was the light reflected from the object which came back to the eye to be seen. He described the phenomenon of dark room with single and double aperture, something, of course, used after that for photography. He said that light travels in straight lines. He described the phenomenon of refraction, and he was also a pioneer of the scientific method, and some people consider him the first true scientist. He wrote more than 50 books. And this is his book, Kitab al-Manazir, the Book of Optics in its Latin translation. Other ophthalmology contributions came from Hunayn ibn Ishaq, cataract removal by the Iraqi physician Ammar ibn Ali al-Mawsili, who used to work in Cairo, description of the retina by Avicenna. Averroes also described the photoreceptor properties, and all this was important for the invention of the eyeglasses which came after that. Other contributors were Ibn Nafis, al-Kahal, and Gibril ibn Buqt-Yashua, as we said. Another famous physician was Ibn Nafis, who described the pulmonary circulation 400 years before William Harvey described it. And he was born in Damascus, but again moved to Cairo in 1236, where he produced more of his work and where he died. And these are his books: الموجز الطب، المهذب في الكحل في الكحل. Again, as you can see, some of these two examples of his books, because he wrote many books. On the other side of the empire was Andalusia. Now we remember that the Arabs conquered Spain and Portugal in the year 711 and remained there for a good 800 years, 781 to be precise, and established their capital in Cordoba, and here's the great Mosque of Cordoba, which was the greatest mosque in the world at that time. There was the father of surgery, Abul Qasis, known in the West, Abul Qasis, his name is Abul Qasim al-Zahrawi. He was born in Madinat al-Zahra, which is a few kilometers west of Cordoba. He actually had a book called The Method of Medicine, where he described more than 200 medical instruments, including scalpels, saws, forceps, splints, syringes, and so on. He used catgut for suturing the wounds. And more important, his book also about hemophilia, abdominal pregnancy, and surgical devices for cesarean section, cataract, and cauterization in some surgeries, head injuries, skull fractures, spinal injuries, and described hydrocephalus. But more important for us gynecologists and obstetricians is that he described the first forceps 400 years before the Chamberlains gave us this modern form. And this here is his forceps, and his is the cephalotype to extract a dead baby from the vagina of his mother who had obstructed labor. This is his book, The Methods of Medicine, and in its also Latin translation. Another person, again, in Andalusia was Averroes, Abul Walid bin Rushd. He was again born and worked in Cordoba. He was a philosopher, of course, and translated many books and commented many books of Aristotle, but he was also a physician, and he produced his important book Al-Kulliyat fi Tibb, known in the West as Collegiate. He described the retinas, which were responsible for sensing light. He spoke about strokes that were produced by the brain, about Parkinson's disease. And as said, he was a philosopher and produced many books, and these are some of the current reproductions of these books, which are based on Aristotle's philosophy. But as said, more importantly for us, he produced this book, Al-Kulliyat في الطب Collegiate, and here is his statue in Cordoba. Another famous physician was Maimonides, Musa ibn Maimun. He was a famous physician, but he was also a Jewish scholar, a Jewish rabbi. He produced the book called the Mishnah Torah, the second book which accompanies the Torah. He was born in Cordoba, but he was expelled from Spain, so he came to Cairo, where he worked as a physician, but he was also a rabbi. He was the head of the Jewish community in Cairo. And as said, he studied medicine in Spain and in Fez, and he became the personal physician of Saladin, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, who sent him to Richard Coeur de Lion during the battle when Richard was sick and when chivalry was the name of the game. He spoke about asthma, diabetes, hepatitis, and pneumonia, and the importance of leading a healthy lifestyle. And here is Rabbi Moshe ben Maimun, for short Rambam, as we may hear this name. Moshe ben Maimun, Musa ibn Maimun. And this is his synagogue in Cairo, and where he died, and then his body was transported and reburied in Tiberias, in the Holy Land. And things remained like this in Spain until the completion of the Reconquista. And here is Los Reyes Católicos, Ferdinand and Isabella entering Granada, the last bastion of the Arabs, Muslims in Spain in 1492, in December of 1492. There they conquered the last bastion in Granada, the Alhambra Palace, and the Generalife Gardens, قصر الحمراء وجنات العريف, El Generalife. Luckily, there was the translation school in Toledo, Civitas Toledana, which started during the 12th century. And there, people came from north of Europe to study and work and copy and translate many of these texts, like Gerard de Cremona, like Daniel of Morley, like Adelard of Bath, and like Michael Scott, and like Guido Chauliac. They all came to the Toledo to get these books, and of course we have the Escorial library in Toledo now, and they took all this knowledge back to the newly established universities. First one, of course, is Bologna, but also Paris, Oxford, Valencia, Cambridge, Salamanca, Montpellier, Padua, and others. And the medical schools, the newly established medical school, most importantly the medical school of Salerno, but also in Naples, Montpellier, Bologna, Padua, Oxford, Cambridge, and a lot. And here is the medical school of Salerno, Scuola Medica Salernitana. On the other side of the empire of the Middle East, Fatih Sultan Mehmed had conquered Constantinople 50 years before the Reconquista in 1453 on the 29th of May. He conquered Constantinople and called it the city of Islam, Islambul, which later was renamed Istanbul. And here is how the Ottoman Empire expanded, because of course, they conquered the whole of the Middle East after that. In the Ottoman Empire, the first capital was Bursa, and there you have this Bimaristan, the Eldemir Bayezid Hospital in Bursa, and there was work that were done in Konya, in different places, but actually many of them studied medicine in Egypt, in Cairo, in the Bimaristan of Qalawun, and wrote some books like Al-Muntakhab, Shifa, Solution of Wellness, as you can see. By that time, the age of enlightenment had dawned in Europe. And here is René Descartes and Francis Bacon and the start of the Western medicine as we know today, which was established to remain up to our current day. Shortly afterwards, Napoleon conquered Egypt in 1798. And the new king of Egypt, Muhammad Ali Pasha, the viceroy of Egypt, he admired what the French had done or were doing. So he asked a French doctor, Antoine Claude, also known in Cairo as Claude Bey, to establish a medical school for his troops, first at the Abu Zabal and then at the palace of Mr. Aini, Qasr al-Aini. Today, of course, Cairo, which is now part of Cairo University. So it's the first medical school probably in the Middle East, established in 1827, so about 200 years ago. At the same time, another school was established in Turkey, followed by Algeria, Morocco, Lebanon, Syria, Sudan, Iraq, and the rest. Today, of course, we have beautiful medical schools in Saudi Arabia and the East, and let's not forget the Oman Medical School, also in Muscat. Out of these schools came very famous doctors, such as likes of Professor Elias Zerhouni, who was professor of radiology at Johns Hopkins University and became the director of the National Institutes of Health, like Professor Magdi Aoub, the first professor of cardiothoracic surgery in England and the first person to do heart and lung transplantation. Now these doctors were the ones who chose to go to the West and work there. But for mere mortals like us who opted to go back to their own countries, our link to modern medicine in obstetrics and gynecology is our Royal College, which was established by the two famous Williams, Professor William Blair Bell and Professor Sir William Fletcher Shaw, the first and third presidents of the college. College, of course, now has 17,500 fellows, more than 17,500 fellows and members. More than half of them live outside the United Kingdom. So, ladies and gentlemen, the legacy of Middle Eastern medicine is very rich. It is not widely appreciated, except by learned societies and colleges, such as the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, who asked me to give this talk. We should remember also that there are similar legacies in India, China, Africa, and other parts of the world which should be shared and recognized. And if we are saying this today, it's not meant to boast about our own heritage, but to inspire today's youth to continue to engage in medical and scientific research. This is a torch that is being passed from one person to another, from a country to another, and from a civilization to another. And with this, I come to the end of my presentation, and I would like to thank you very much for your attention and invite you to our beloved city of Alexandria and its famous newly established library. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hassan Salam. I'm a professor in obstetrics and gynecology at Alexandria University in Egypt, and today I'm going to talk to you about the legacy of Middle Eastern medicine. This, in fact, was a lecture I gave in the opening ceremony of the World Congress of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecology in Muscat, Oman in October of 2024.